Okay, this is part 2 of our survey of Ezekiel chapters 40 through 49, and we left off with the overall dimensions of the east outer gate. Next, the angel shows him narrow windows to the little chambers, and likewise to the arches. The arches are the 5 cubit wide spaces through the sides of the gate. And the purpose of the windows was to allow the guards to see out and see everything that's going on, and yet they were narrow enough that no one could get in and interfere with the guards. And upon each post of the porch of the gate, there's palm tree ornaments, and the purpose of these is to give a visual indication as to where the door is, where the gate is for the building, especially because you have the sameness of the roof and pillars here. Here's a diagram of the gates. We have 6 cubits for the threshold, 6 for the guard rooms, 5 for the spaces, but when you add on the 2 half-cubit walls, it comes out to 6, so it's easy to add up the length. We have 8 sixes is 48 plus 2 is 50. For the width, we know that the passageway is 10 and 7.5 on each side makes 25. And here the 25 is made up by 6 for the inside of the guard chamber, plus an additional half a cubit for the width of the wall, with the 10 in the middle leaves 1 cubit left over for space in front of the guard rooms, and the width of 25. He measured the breadth from the then he went into the outer court, and there were chambers. Here's one of the chambers. 30 chambers were upon the pavement, and the pavement by the side of the gates over against the length of the gates, because remember it's 50 cubits this way, was called the lower pavement. And it's called the lower pavement because there's only 7 steps up to it, whereas the inner court has 8 steps up to it, so that pavement will be higher. Here's another view of some of the chambers along the wall, 10 on each wall, for the east, south, and north walls, none on the west. He measures the outer court from the forefront of the lower gate here unto the forefront of the inner court without, in other words, the outside of the inner court. 100 cubits eastward, right here, and 100 cubits northward. So the inner court was 100 cubits all the way around. Now there's 5 other gates, and these numbers show the order in which the angel shows them to Ezekiel. He shows the outer northern, the outer southern, the inner south, the inner east, and then the inner north. So the outer north was after the measure of the first gate, meaning the same measure, 50 by 25 and 7 steps. And the south is according to the same measures, 50 by 25. The inner south is the same measures, 50 by 25, but it has 8 steps. The inner east gate, same measures. Notice there's no porch here on the inside, and there's no steps. The gates for the inner court are reversed from the gates for the outer court. The porches for the inner court face outward, whereas the porches for the outer court face inward. So all of the gates have their porches facing the outer court. The inner north gate, then he goes through and turns around. And 4 tables were on this side and 4 tables on that side. 8 tables whereon they slew their sacrifices. Why sacrifices in the millennial kingdom? In the messianic kingdom? Because sacrifices never took away sin. Only Jesus taking our place and suffering the wrath of God for us. God being a just God cannot justify the unrighteous. And just as we have the Lord's Supper, the bread and wine, to remind us of what the Lord did on the cross for us, and we celebrate that until he comes. After he returns, this is the method of remembering what the Lord did for us. And this will last until the new heaven and new earth, because during the Messianic kingdom there are still those that don't know the Lord, and there's a final rebellion and a final judgment at the end of the millennial kingdom. So there needs to be this reminder of the tragedy of sin. Here's the chambers for the singers on the inner court. One is on the north with its door on the south. The other is on the south with its door on the north. Here's the inner court, 100 cubits long, 100 cubits broad, 4 square. We know what 4 square symbolizes. And the altar is before the house, meaning the temple. Here's a diagram of the temple compound. The outer border, we came through this little wall, through the east gate. We looked at the outer court and the other gates, and we looked at the chambers for the singers and the inner court. We're going to now be looking at the temple, the separate place, and the west building. So as far as the temple, the posts are 5 cubits by 3 cubits, 5 by 3. And the length of the porch is 20 this way. Length is always the long way, even no matter which way it faces. And the breadth of the porch is 11 this way. And there are pillars on each side, large special pillars. Now the holy place, or the temple, is not the same as the most holy place. It's this first door and first room inside after the porch. The door is 6 on each side. It's hard to see because of the folding doors here, but this is one rod right here, so it shows 6. By the way, it's 1 cubit into the wall of the temple, which is why it says the breadth. I'm sorry, he measured the... I'm sorry, that's the most holy place. Alright, 6 cubits broad on one side. Here's the 6. And it says the breadth of the tabernacle. So the wall is 6 cubits wide, and the post here goes in 1 cubit into the wall. And the door itself is 10 cubits. So here we see 5 on each side, because the 6 by 6 post goes in 1 cubit into the wall, and a 10 cubit door. And the whole room of the holy place is 2 20 by 20 cubit square areas. In other words, 40 cubits by 20 cubits. Then he looks at the most holy place. He measures the door posts. 2 cubits is this wood part behind the folding doors, and the breadth, and the door itself 6 cubits, 1 rod right here. And then the breadth of the door 7 cubits on each side, so 5 for the wall and 2 for the post. And then inside, the length is 20 cubits and the breadth 20 cubits. And he said this is the most holy place. So here we see 20 by 20. Next he measures the side chambers. That's this wooden part here. They're 4 cubits down below, and they get wider as they go up. The SB says the side chambers were broader as they encompassed the house higher and higher. And it says here that they're in 3 stories. So it's 4, 5, and 6 wide. The temple wall gets smaller. It starts off as 6, and then 5, and then 4. And that's so that these chambers can sit on the temple wall without being attached to it. The foundation of the side chambers were a full reed of 6 cubits. That's right here. So this temple sits higher than everything else by 6 cubits, including its roof is higher by 6 cubits. And then the thickness of the wall for the side chambers without, that's this wall, is 5 cubits. And between the chambers is a wideness of 20 cubits roundabout. That's talking about this part called the separate place. We'll see it more. And the doors of the side chambers were toward the place that was left. One door toward the north and another door towards the south. Here's the place that's left. This is the door towards the south. So it's a walkway. The breadth of the place that was left was 5 cubits roundabout all the way around. So here we've got this walkway all around, as well as the separate place all around. Here's the west building. It's 70 by 90 on its internal dimensions. It's got a 5 cubit thick wall all around, which makes it 100 long and 80 wide, so that when you add on the 20 here, it's actually 100 by 100 area. For the overall dimensions, first he measures east to west, and he measures the temple 100 cubits long, counting this wall here for the outer wall of the side chambers, and then 100 cubits for the west building plus the separate space. Then he measures north to south, and he goes to the face of the house, and he includes the separate area on both sides, and that comes out to 100 cubits across. And then he measures the separate place along the west building this way, and the separate place along the galleries on both sides. We haven't looked at the galleries yet, but it's 100 here and 100 here. We see that in this diagram using the same guidance over here. We have east to west first, the temple 100 long, and then the west building plus its walls plus the separate space 100 long. And then for north to south, we've got the temple with its outer walls for the side chambers and the separate place on each side 100. And then for the separate place against the three buildings, the west building 100, and the gallery on the south 100, and the gallery on the north 100. Inside the temple, inside the temple, we have cherubs and a palm, cherub and a palm. And the cherubs are supposed to have two faces, a man and a lion, but I didn't have that available to put on the walls. Through the house roundabout. The altar of incense is 3 cubits high and 2 wide. The doors, both the sanctuary and the temple have 2 doors. This is the sanctuary door. It has 2 doors, one on this side and one on this side. And the doors have 2 leaves apiece, so 2 leaves, folding leaves here and 2 folding leaves here. And they have the cherubs and palms on them as well. Here's the porch. There are thick planks, narrow windows, and here's also the picture of the folding doors, one on this side and one on the other side. Okay, now we look at the priest rooms. Over against the inner court and against the pavement, which was for the outer court. In other words, against meaning facing, not touching. Here's over against the inner court and facing the pavement for the outer court, which is over here. We have the priest chambers. They have a gallery upon gallery, 3 stories. These are the galleries, the walkways, so that every room can have a little bit of outside area. They also have a walkway through there. Of 10 cubits in between. And the chambers that were towards the outer court were only 50 cubits long, whereas the chambers that were before the temple were 100 cubits long. Then he shows us the brazen altar before the temple. These stairs should go all the way up here, and the dimensions are right here for you. And the priest boiling places in the far western side. This is the walkway we just saw between the priest places there, between the galleries. And these boiling places are where the priests boil their sacrifices. And that's about all the time we have for this tape. Please